if you have better customer satisfaction, if your outages are fixed faster, if you have, if you can manage a fiber cut, you know, one of the things all of us, you know, think about every day in the service provider environment, those are things that have a direct customer effect. And so those are the types of outcomes that we're laser focused on.
We think we know a lot about Cisco Systems. It's a big company, it's in the news all the time, it's publicly traded, but it's hard to say exactly how much a company is really changing until you get inside. I had an opportunity to speak with Yvette Kanouff, who runs Cisco's service provider business. The service provider business is massive. It cuts across all their technology lines, and it handles the world's largest carriers. It's interesting to find out how much Cisco is changing and also how network automation has really come to the forefront. Here's what Yvette had to say. So Yvette, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the service provider group within Cisco. How many different parts of Cisco make up the service provider group, and what are the technologies and products that sort of comprise the whole unit that you're running?
So I head up 5 different areas in service provider. So the first one being routing, and that's core edge access. There's optical and optics as a second area, so that would be all of the long haul and metro optical equipment that we sell. The mobility group, which would be packet core policy, SON, things like that, and cable, so anything dealing with HFC infrastructure, CMTS, and then finally the video group that's comprised of video processing. It's comprised of video applications, video security.
Okay, Chuck Robbins, CEO, has put out the sort of 5 pillars of Cisco, or 5 priorities. How well does that line up with what service providers are wanting and needing from their vendors and from the technology marketplace?
So the 5 pillars of Cisco, the priorities are reinventing networking, it's about security, it's about multi-cloud, it's about the power of data, and the customer experience and collaboration tools. So, of those 5 pillars, you look at what it is we're doing in service provider, 50% CAGR of mobility growth. We have to reinvent networking. So everything we're doing in terms of building systems differently, looking at automation, different tooling, different architectures, very, very important and incredibly aligned with one of those pillars. If you look at IoT and different architectures for the enablement of that, multi-cloud, we talk about MEC. It's not just public cloud and private cloud. You talk about us going all the way lower and deeper into the network. Also very aligned with service provider. Security, we can't talk about it enough, going deep and wide. So I'm really feel that the service provider priorities and what's happening with all the architectural shifts is incredibly aligned.
Yeah, and as someone who's sort of been in this space a few years, it's interesting for me to hear how many different areas service providers are getting into now. It used to be all about just an obsessive drive to connect more people and just providing connections. Now we're talking about like you said, machine learning and cloud and some of these areas that they have priorities in that are really stretching the limits of networking and computing at the same time. These are different types of companies. They're also becoming more software based. Right. What is sort of the next evolution of Cisco's service provider group as it relates to software and becoming more software enabled?
I think there were 2 really good points in that question. So maybe I'll split the answer into 2. I think the first part about how it is that service providers are changing and really growing their business. I just wanted to touch on that for a minute because it's a really good comment, and I think that it's a place where we feel Cisco's more important than ever to our service provider customers. And if you look at the expansion into IoT, how it is that we can create IoT infrastructures. So infrastructures aren't just mobility or backhaul or long haul. It's about really creating infrastructures for different businesses, and so I think that there's a whole opportunity for our customers to grow their businesses. Then the enterprise business space and how it is that they're growing there, and we have such an important set of products in that area. And then to the second part of your question, which is software, obviously something that we talk about a lot and the industry talks about a lot, because I think cloud-based software, easily launched managed services, take a look at what it is we're doing with Meraki, or what it is we're doing with cloud-based security. It's so easy to turn on, and a typical SMB might not have the time or ability to look at every possible solution for your Wi-Fi, then connecting your security, and then doing something with a PBX, and and keep going for something that Joe's Pizza chain might want.
Right, it's just not their business. Yeah.
It's not, so you go to a service provider and you get this fantastic bundle of all of these services, and you can turn them on like that. They're managed out of the cloud. If you launch something like cloud-based Meraki, you have full access to see who's using what in your restaurant, and you can see what it is that usage is. On the infrastructure side, on my business unit side, virtualization, cloud-based infrastructures, especially how it is we're going to utilize mobile edge compute. I would say the entire concept of disaggregation and creating value for software separate of hardware. We're deeply entrenched in a hardware-based business, and moving that to saying hardware is valuable, and we are a great hardware provider, and we'll continue to focus on ASICs and hardware and systems, but separately, our software and carrier class software across the system super important, which launches also into the automation discussion, which, it's not just software of things like disaggregated or virtualized packet core routing.
Right. And I definitely want to talk about automation real quick. Just on the software subject, one of the priorities for service providers in becoming more software enabled is to go toward, to use more open source tools and DevOps processes in their own internal development. What is Cisco's role in helping service providers in that arena? Are they asking you to be a distributor, an integrator, or sort of how do they approach having you work with their open source priorities?
We are incredibly involved in open source, a big contributor to open source. And so for things like, we were just talking about automation, so let me use that as an example. Okay. We have many different open source components of it, where it is that having a bigger set of contributors and being able to build on top of that helps. We're very, we embrace that fully, and we utilize that. So it makes sense in some areas. In other areas, it's something where it might be our secret sauce, and we feel that we have a great value add, and that's something we wouldn't open source. So I would say that we're highly contributing, but also have our value add on top of it.
Hearing the different service provider stories in automation is really interesting to me. I'm curious, is there a specific example recently where a service provider has automated some part of their business and either achieved some sort of goal, a headcount goal, or a customer outcome that really demonstrates the power of automation that you've been able to see or hear about?
It's interesting you mention headcount and outcome, because those are two words that I use a lot as well. And so most people think, automation, I want to save cost. And I think that the real focus needs to be on what it is that the outcome is that you're looking for. Saving cost is nice, but the outcome is so much more valuable, right? Because it might be that the people that you're saving that don't have to do something manually anymore end up becoming the experts to build the automation systems, right? So I'm going to put that aside, because certainly you can look at it as cost savings.
Sure.
But if you have better customer satisfaction, if your outages are fixed faster, if you have, if you can manage a fiber cut, one of the things all of us, think about every day in the service provider environment. If I can reroute traffic, if I can reduce hops, if I can optimize my traffic flows, those are things that have a direct customer effect. Your network's faster, your network's better, your network has less outages. And so those are the types of outcomes that we're laser focused on. So automation is such a big word, and so many people can say, oh, I'm correlating, or I'm using artificial intelligence to correlate this issue, and this issue. That's more almost network management, right? But truly automating and optimizing a network. I'll give you an example. Doing software upgrades in a service provider environment, we're carrier class. We take this very serious. We do a lot of practice and the reviews of the MOPS. However, one mistake that's a typing error can bring down a significant part of the network. So, so we have reduced over 70% of manual errors in configuration by people through orchestration tools of automation. The one example I love pointing out to is one of our customers was doing one upgrade a day is all they could, and that was a big deal, and that was with a lot of practice and repeating.
Right.
And through automation, they were doing 25,000 router upgrades a day. So.
Throughout their whole network.
It's amazing.
Every part of the network.
And so what you can see in terms of velocity, in terms of, and this is where the CI/CD and agile environment comes in. What we're doing working with our customers is we're focused on a problem. I have this problem, fiber cuts, whatever it might be, and let's try to heal that through automation. It's very fun.
Is that how the service provider discussion begins? Are they coming to Cisco and saying and stating it as a problem, and then Cisco's applying automation, or are they saying we want to automate our network, and then sort of putting out a bunch of options for potential cost savings or whatever, however they're measuring it?
I think that it's mixed, and so some are coming up and saying, "Hey, I need to save money on my operating costs, and so I need some savings through automation." And some are coming and saying, "I want to fix the outcomes." In the end, we always address the outcomes anyway, so the cost saving comes with it, but the velocity and things like that. That's such a new measure. It's exciting.
What is internally? How is Cisco focusing more on automation-related outcomes? Is it a matter of realigning people and how they work with technologies, or is it how they cluster around customers? I know that's kind of inside baseball for how Cisco works, but I just think it's a curious thing to address, because as you mentioned, it's getting harder to measure these sorts of things, especially the stuff that's going on way behind the network.
I think it's a really good discussion to have, because changing engineering teams to focus from toys and features to efficiency and simplicity, it's an entire twist and turn. So building automation tools in from the beginning, your test tools in from the beginning, working in a CI/CD environment, it's a massive transition. And so so we have the best routing and infrastructure expertise in the world, and now we have to change the entire thinking to move to a new way of working. And so we measure it very closely. We've been focused on this for years now, but it's been a journey to really. You would think hardware-based systems would be delivered only in one way, and we're doing it. We're truly embracing it. So, I would say that's been a very an important task and a big transition for us.
And answer this one however you like, either focused on automation or any particular part of the business. But how? What do you see as the Cisco service provider group's biggest opportunity in the next 12 to 18 months as you're looking at what your customers need?
I mean, I think that most people would answer that by just saying 5G and make it a simple answer.
And it's a pretty big one.
It's a big one. I would say it's going kind of one step even up from that. It's the architectural transitions that we're in the midst of. So 5G is about a spectrum, low latency, but take apart, it's not really the added spectrum or anything like that. It's the architectural shifts we're doing, moving data center deeper into the network, looking at how it is, what sits there, how do we architect where applications sit, looking at fabric architecture, software and hardware based, looking at peering and infrastructures. There's an entire shift, and likewise on cable. you look at cable, which isn't 5G, but they're doing the same things, right? Virtualizing and creating new scale. It's a really exciting time, I think, in terms of what we're doing for architectural changes, and we're right in the midst of it, and hopefully we'll continue to be at the forefront of that whole transition.
Great. Yvette, thanks so much for talking with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Phil.